Hey, this is Melvin Ishmael Johnson. I'm the host of the Qumran Report podcast. I'm also the instructor. We're over at the Vortex, excellent facility over here. I teach a veterans community theater workshop Wednesdays over here for veterans and non-veterans. And we're going to do an interview with Hassan. I'm going to ask Hassan, now tell us your name and a little about your background.
My name is Hassan Jamal, and I'm from western Pennsylvania, southwestern Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh. My mother's family goes back about 5 generations there, but my father's family's from the south. I think we talked about that. And my dad's family from the south. But I graduated, Melvin, sometimes I talk about it too much, but I graduated from a high school in Pittsburgh that's actually probably known all over the state. It's called Westinghouse High School. And our most famous alumni is Billy Strayhorn, who wrote everything for Duke Ellington. He wrote Lush Life, he wrote A-Train. Actually, we finally got a plaque in the front yard of Westinghouse High School for Billy Strayhorn. And Westinghouse High School is in the Homewood section of Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is a strange city. It has 2 black communities. Well, up until maybe the early 80s it did. One area is called the Hill District, and that's where August Wilson's from.
I was getting ready to ask you about August Wilson up in Hill District.
Yeah, Pittsburgh has 2, basically, well, right now there's black people all over Pittsburgh, but you know, from the middle 1800s probably to the 50s, there was, Pittsburgh. It was interesting for Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is a major city, but it's a small city. And for it to be a small city, it had 2 hustling, bustling black communities. One was the Hill District, which was near downtown Pittsburgh, where all of August Wilson's plays take place. And then the other one was Homewood, which is on the other side of the city. That's where I'm from. I didn't grow up right in the center of Homewood, a little bit on the edge of it. But anyway, Billy Strayhorn, who wrote all that amazing stuff for Duke Ellington, Billy Strayhorn was from Homewood.
Let me tell you about my amazing connection with Pittsburgh. Which is amazing. Pittsburgh is where I took my Shahada at.
Oh, you made Shahada in Pittsburgh?
Oh yeah. And I took it with a brother named Amir. And Amir was from that, what you're talking about, the second section.
Homewood?
Yeah, because Amir was a brother of Phyllis Hyman, was his brother. Well, that was his sister.
Okay, Phyllis.
And so at the time, we're talking about, man, way back early 80s, Amir, we ran with the Ansar Islamic Hebrew community, and I took my Shahada with a brother named Muta Ali, who at the time he was the security for the Ansars.
In Pittsburgh?
Yeah, the Ansars, all the Ansars. The Ansars at that time was under a brother named Iman Isa, was his name. He created the Ansar. He's fighting the case now. As a matter of fact, he's locked up down. And then, so I was real close to, I took my Shahada with Brother Amir. I used to bump into him every now and then when I used to travel a lot. And
he's still with us? He's still?
Oh yeah, still around. And one of the things about the university, that's where they got Carnegie, that little section up in there. But one of the things, about the University of Pittsburgh is when I was working on my play about Charles Gipling, I did a lot of research at that excellent library. They got a library there. They have so much.
So you lived in Pittsburgh for a while?
Oh yeah. And then
You never
down
told
there,
me that.
yeah, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, because I was involved with the Hassans, and we used to travel from Pittsburgh, Philadelphia,
Cleveland, you go through
New York, yeah, all of those areas were the Ansars. It was the Ansars, Allah community, Islamic Hebrews, what they would call themselves. And even Esau, who also became Dr. Malachi York, and they set up a community in Atlanta and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, so I was familiar with both of those communities. Up on the hill, I used to go up in that little area where Arthur Wilson did a lot of his work.
You know, there's no more hill. I mean, it's gentrified.
Yeah, oh yeah, all of those areas.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You know, Mel, I never would have thought I would have saw a day when the hill looked better than Homewood. I mean, because the hill is gentrified now.
Yeah.
It's, you know, and Homewood looks pretty rough. Homewood looks pretty, because I was back there about 6 years ago, and prior to that, I hadn't been back in about 20 years. And yeah, it's Homewood looks pretty rough.
It happened to all of these when you think about Memphis, you think about Beale Street.
I don't know that much about Memphis. I heard of Bill Street.
Yeah, Beale Street, hey, that's the blues and all of that.
Yeah,
Come out of the Mississippi Delta and went through there, all of them, they're on their way to Chicago.
Yeah.
And so they had Beale Street. And James Baldwin book that they just made a movie out called If Beale Street Could Talk.
Beale Street Could Talk.
See, and they talking about Beale Street, but now Beale Street been gentrified the same way that you're talking about in the Hill.
In the Hill District.
Yeah, Pittsburgh.
Actually, it's kind of, actually, I'll be brief. It's kind of hard for me to watch an August Wilson play because he starts talking about Wiley Avenue and Center Avenue, and I walked all those streets.
Yeah.
You know, and Center Avenue and Fifth Avenue. I mean,
Yeah. Because you remember out of the University of Pittsburgh, sure, before I go back, they had the great football player that come out, Tony Dorsett.
yeah.
That come out of there and, went with the Dallas Cowboys and all that kind of stuff like that.
He's from Beaver Falls, PA. Yeah. Same city I think Joe Namath is from. Yeah.
Come out of there. Now, how did you first get off into the arts? Was it at this high school also?
No, actually, at Westinghouse, I was a jock. I wasn't a great jock. I ran cross country and track, and I was into politics. I was into politics. I ran for student council president. And I didn't win, so we started an organization called Black Students Alliance. And,
In high school?
Yeah, in high school. And it was interesting because I had never went to an all-black high school. I had never went to a black school, Melvin, until I got to high school. I had went to integrated elementary and junior highs. That's another story, but I had never went to an all-black school until I went to Westinghouse High School in Pittsburgh. And the thing is, I was supposed to go to this very prestigious white high school in the Squirrel Hill section of Pittsburgh. Remember, that's where that Jewish synagogue was shot up at.
Recent.
Yeah. Well, there was a school which I thought was terrible because I knew some beautiful people in the Squirrel Hill district of Pittsburgh, but there was a school called Taylor Alderdice. Because see, people in my neighborhood, we integrated the public schools in Pittsburgh. We were one of the first people that was in one of the busing across town. And I had went to this integrated white high school near Squirrel Hill, and they said I tried to start a riot. So they wouldn't let me go to high school up there. So they said, you got to go back to Homewood and go to high school. And I had never went to an all-black high school. And so anyway, we started Black Student Alliance, and there was a brother named Arnold Perry who was the president, and I was vice president, and then Arnold graduated and I became president. And so I was basically involved in politics, in sports, but I started writing poetry in high school, and on, like I said, the area where Westinghouse High School is called Homewood, and there was a main street that went through Homewood called Homewood Avenue, and in the summer, the conga players would be out there playing, and I used to read poetry behind them. And that's really how I got, I'm a drummer too.
Yeah.
And that's how I got into drum, reading poetry behind other brothers playing the conga.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Now, one thing about Pittsburgh, it's a great book to read because in the 50s, Paul Robeson and William Patterson, they spent a lot of time in Pittsburgh.
Paul Robeson went.
Oh, yeah, because it's a book, William Patterson wrote a book called The Man Who Cried Genocide. And while they was in Pittsburgh, William Patterson he was involved with the communist movement there, so he was working with the black community there.
Patterson was a brother?
Yeah, William Patterson. And he's the one that headed up the Scottsboro trial of the youngsters in Alabama that was
When you say
accused.
headed it up, what did you mean?
He was a lawyer.
Oh,
Also.
wow.
Yeah, he headed up the team, the team that kept them from being executed. But he spent about 2 or 3 years in Pittsburgh working with the black community there before Paul Robeson and Patterson took the United States to the UN and accused them of genocide. See, and what it was, Patterson was in France at the UN, and at the same time, Paul Robeson was here in New York.
Yeah.
And they read the documents documenting the United States as being genocide against the black community, the black community here in the United States. And it's an excellent book. He got a whole chapter in there.
Patterson?
Yeah, and the name of the book is called The Man Who Cried Genocide. It's his bio by William Patterson.
I learned so much from you, Melvin.
Yeah.
Again, I don't want to digress.
Yeah, let's
but,
go ahead.
No, but it's interesting how we're dealing with a major athlete right now, the San Francisco Giants.
Yeah.
What's his name?
Kaepernick.
Kaepernick. I mean, we have these two men, Paul Robeson and Kaepernick, who literally gave up millions for their people. And it's interesting how they weren't just, well, I don't know about Kaepernick that much, but Robeson wasn't just some average athlete.
Right, because to me, the reason I don't compare the two is because of Robeson had more of an international vision of the world. And Robeson, the difference is that Robeson speaking up so much for the black community, and they look at him as being your early threat before Malcolm and before Martin Luther King.
Good way to put it.
Yeah, and the difference between Robeson and Kaepernick is Paul Robeson was a student athlete. Because Paul Robeson, when he was the greatest athlete of his time at Rutgers, and he was also the top in terms of academic, in terms of what he was dealing with.
He was the first black All-American. He was the first black All-American.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a lot of these kids now, I mean, I'm not knocking them, who were a lot of these black athletes who were in college and think they're top dog and everything.
Yeah.
Paul Robeson was the first.
Yeah.
He was the first.
And another thing about Paul Robeson, and Malcolm understood this also because he also said it, is that entertainers and athletes, will never be, that's a diversion. Malcolm and Paul Robeson, he had moved away from being an athlete. And when he got into the entertainment business and the politics and the people that really brought him to consciousness was the Provincetown Players. See, Provincetown Players, which is the first major community theater company in the United States, was founded by radicals. The brother
What state was that?
Reed,
What state was Provincetown?
Provincetown, New York, Massachusetts,
okay.
right there. They Jack Reed, who wrote the famous book 10 Days That Shook the World about the Russian Revolution. He was one of the founders of the Provincetown Players. So was Emma Goldman, Max Eatmans, all these was radicals that got
Emma
kicked
Goldman
out.
was?
Yeah, they got kicked out of the country. They involved with the Provincetown Players, Eugene O'Neill. See, and when Robeson got involved with the Provincetown Players, that was the beginning of his consciousness. And remember, he always attached himself to Soviet Union because one of the things, it was against the law to discriminate in Soviet Union like it is today. See, And look how long it took the United States to go against that anti-lynching bill when they were lynching soldiers coming back from World War II, and they catch them in their uniform and lynch them and burn them up and all that old kind of madness and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
so I make a clear difference between what Kaepernick was doing in terms of for athletes,
Yeah.
you know, but like what Malcolm said, that that we can't look for entertainers, and we cannot look for entertainers and sports figures to be our leaders. He pointed that out. He even mentioned, he said people like Dick Gregory, these comedians and all, they can't lead, they can't be our leaders. And the brother had already put the book, The Miseducation of Negro, Carter G. Woodson, to explain, that the upper echelon of our community will always take us in the wrong direction.
But Mel, you do know, again, not to cut you off, but but just by what Kaepernick did, it put him on an international platform.
Put him on the international platform without a doubt, but it always boils the question is, what impact have it had on the black community? Did it change anything that you see down there happening in Skid Row? Let me ask you this question.
I see where you're coming from.
Yeah, since he took a knee, have Skid Row got better or worse since then?
I see where you're coming from.
Yeah. It might have some impact for the athletes who, as far as I'm concerned, need to step out more because people open doors during that particular time where they can get all
my question
this
too is,
stuff.
do we expect Brother Kaepernick to change Skid Row by taking a knee? Do we expect it?
No, I think one of the things that we could say about it is the good thing is incidents like that will bring consciousness to the movements and needs in the community. But see, what we need is solutions. We need tangible plans. When I say tangible plans, we need something like overall after-school programs that are going to impact the young people in all of these different areas all over the United States that are living in poverty. And
what we also need to do is let police departments across this country know that black people are human beings. And that's one of the things that Kaepernick wanted to do. And it takes somebody. It takes somebody who white America looks at every Sunday running up and down a field. If that has to be the person that's going to be the face, then by all means, let him do it. I mean,
well, see, I go all the way back to in this sense. Jacob, who was thought Malcolm X was the Messiah, the black Messiah. And so I can accept that.
Wow.
And so I listened to what Malcolm said. And Malcolm said clearly, we cannot have these entertainers and sports heroes being our leaders. Our leaders got to come from the community, you know. Now, it's okay in the past when we had the serious leaders like the ministers, but the multimedia, the church and all, the internet have changed that with these mega churches, and so we've lost that kind of leadership.
But again, Mel, I know you didn't want to dwell on this one thing, but the thing is, Kaepernick, he forsake millions upon millions, and I don't think he wanted to be a leader. I just think he wanted to tell white America, I'm going to fuck up your Sunday until you stop shooting black people. Excuse my French.
Yeah.
Excuse my language.
Yeah.
Because he was a quarterback. And I remember as a kid asking my father, I grew up like in the middle 60s, and I remember, and there were no black quarterbacks. Actually, the Steelers had the first black quarterback. And I remember asking my father, how come there isn't no black quarterbacks? He said, one day there will be some, so anyway, I'm digressing. I'm digressing.
Yeah, because see, as far as, I remember you were saying earlier, see, I went to high school in the Mississippi Delta.
Right.
All black. I had no white teachers because lived in a totally segregated community. And it was in my hometown that laid the focus for two major things that happened. for black people moving to the Democratic Party because of an incident that happened in my hometown, 1927 flood, and Herbert Hoover going back on his promise to give all of that land to black people if they support him for the 1928 election. And they did. He won. He made deals with the Dixiecrats down there. Blacks down there moved away from the Republican Party, and the next election they made him pay by supporting Franklin Delano Roosevelt. New Deal came along. That's one thing. The next thing is an incident to show you how miseducated people is in this community, in this country, especially the black educated elite. There's a report called the Coburn Report. And when Lyndon Johnson and all of them signed the Civil Rights Bill in 1965, remember had Dr. King and all like that, it was a 2-year rider that went along with that. For the first time, they had to do a report on the equality of education in the United States of America. Wow. So they get Dr. Coleman, who come out of the University of Chicago, where they develop all the other espionage types, intelligence stuff that come out of there. MK Ultra program come out of Chicago. And he come, one of the towns he came to, he studied my high school, called Coleman High School.
Mississippi?
Yeah. Okay. And then they had 2 years to finish that report called the Coleman Report, right? Most important document in the history of education in this country. And when they got it at the end of the 2 years, he told one of the biggest, he took the information and said that black people learn better when they're around white people. So how can you say that when we in a totally segregated society down there? Where are you getting your documents from when blacks never had a chance to go to school with whites down there? So he used that to bring in busing and desegregation and all that kind of stuff like that.
In the face of the black colleges and all of that. You know, the historic black colleges, that flies right in the face of, you know,
yeah,
of all that, you know.
Yeah, but that's a whole nother discussion about the historic black school. But let me get back to what I want, because I think that you're off into something that's so interesting, because we're talking about, when you're talking about Shakespeare, you're talking about the individual who developed, who brought the European English into the modern world. The whole language of, the King James Version of the Bible, it's no accident that they came out in 1611. There's no accident that's called the King James Version. And there's no accident that one of the persons who had the job of going over all of these translations was Sir Francis Bacon. See, all of them was close friends and stuff like that.
Bacon and Shakespeare were around the same age?
They were contemporaries. Yeah, and all three of them were Scottish Rite Masons, you know, at that particular time. And like I said, the works of Shakespeare is what brought England into the modern world. You know, and the King James Version of the Bible into Shakespeare.
Are you familiar with Ed Cambridge? Ed Cambridge was the resident director at LA Theater Center. At LA,
yeah, during the time when Sellers was back there and all that.
When Bill Bushnell?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Actually, Ed Cambridge, if you look at the end of all our episodes, I say thank you to Ed Cambridge. I studied with two, well, I'm going back. I studied with, you know, my major in college was theater, and but I studied with two people right out of college. One person was named Hal DeWitt, and the other person's name was Ed Cambridge. And Hal DeWitt, and it's interesting, yeah, I'll break it down right here. I learned two basic things from each of those brothers. And, you know, Mel, I literally learned how to act in Homewood, in Pittsburgh. I mean, really. I mean, that's where I learned on Homewood Avenue, watching people, observing. But and then I majored in theater in college, and I don't even remember what we did. The two people who really changed my life in the art world, in the theater world, were Hal DeWitt and Ed Cambridge. And it's interesting because they both taught totally different concepts. They were both New York actors and directors, and they both came out of Harlem. Actually, Hal DeWitt was a model and an actor. And you remember the where they had a little guy with a stocking cap.
Yeah.
When Hal DeWitt was young, he was the model. That was, but he just did that for money. But he was the director. He was, and he had the Inglewood Playhouse, and that's where we did workshops at. We studied over there, and like I said, I basically learned how to act, Mel, on the streets of Pittsburgh. But Hal DeWitt basically taught me how to deal with white Hollywood. He taught me how to, I don't know how to elaborate on that, but he just taught me how to deal with Hollywood. And then pecking orders, like in the early 80s, after you studied with Hal DeWitt for a while, you went, because Hal was doing all his workshops in the Inglewood area. He was at the Inglewood Playhouse. And after you studied with Hal, I did Raisin in the Sun with Hal DeWitt. He cast me as Bobo, and after you work with Hal DeWitt, then you go up to LA Theater Center. This is when LA Theater Center was in Hollywood, right on the corner of Santa Monica and Western, and you would audition to see if you could get into Ed Cambridge's class. And Ed Cambridge was Godfrey Cambridge's cousin. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you familiar with Godfrey?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Ed Cambridge was Godfrey Cambridge's cousin. And I'm coming up close on the Shakespeare thing. In order to get into Ed Cambridge's class, Mel, you had to audition for him, and you had to have a contemporary and a classical monologue. And Ed Cambridge was heavy into Shakespeare, And I remember, and I wanted to study with Ed bad. Ed was Marla Gibbs' personal coach. And there were a bunch of black actors back then in the early 80s who Ed was their personal coach. But I remember I did a monologue from Richard III. I forgot what that monologue was. And but anyway, if you look at the end of all our Shakespeare episodes, you see for Ed Cambridge.
Well, let me ask you, what do you think? What do you see as a relationship between Shakespeare and the black community? How could you, let me take it a little farther. One of the things I noticed about Lynn is he always, he was talking about shoot, and he was talking about how they used the theme from King Lear to write that play. Where you see the importance of Shakespeare to the black community?
Well, let me say this. In high school, in Westinghouse High School in Pittsburgh, I'll never forget Miss Elassa Weary, our English teacher. The only, bless her heart, she did everything she could to make it entertaining for us. The only play we did in her class was Hamlet. And like I said, the area where Westinghouse is called Homewood. And I'll never forget, my friend Gary Stevens was in my English class, and Miss Elassa Weary asked us, this must have been 10th grade, she said, now open up your book, your Hamlet book. And I'll never forget Gary raised his head and said, Miss Elassa Weary, why do we have to know about Hamlet and Homewood? And for some reason, that just stuck in my head. But to answer your question, and I know I'm skipping around, but most people who have read my poetry, Melvin, and have seen other things I did, even dark comedy, they know that most of the stuff I do is political. And when they saw me doing Shakespeare, they were saying, Hassan, Shakespeare is not political. And I'm saying, are you crazy? That's some of the most political literature ever written.
Yeah. A couple more things I want to ask you. I want to before I think that's about all about Shakespeare I want to ask you is,
Well, can I say what?
go ahead.
I was just going to say one more thing. When we, Melvin, when I look for actors, we have about we're called the LA Subway Shakespeare Project, and we do all our scenes at the new metro. Los Angeles has one of the newest light rail and subway systems in the country, and we do all our scenes are set around the metro station, light rail.
I think I've seen most of them.
Yeah, thank you for watching them, Melvin. We put a lot of hard work into them. I lost my train of thought, but anyway, I think that if I had saw black people in Homewood, that look like me, talking, doing Shakespeare skits on corners, I don't think Shakespeare would have bored me as much in English class as it did. Oh, I know what I was going to say. I lost my train of thought. The thing is, when our theater company, when we look for actors, we don't look for classically trained actors, Melvin, and we don't look for actors who are Shakespearean scholars. I don't want iambic pentameter and all that.
Yeah.
The whole thing is, I want, like me and you are talking now.
Yeah, modern.
Yeah, but the thing is, they have to cross every T and dot every I. They have to cross every T and dot every I.
Now, when I was in high school, we couldn't graduate without, we had to do monologues from Macbeth and all like that to get up out of there. Well, let me ask you this.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm rubbing this table. You think it was interfering with the mic?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
How did you meet Lynn Manning?
Well, like I said before, Lynn Manning, meeting him predated by about 2 or 3 years. It predated, I had heard about Lynn. I had heard about this cat named Lynn Manning, and I heard about Waits. And I didn't know he had did 19 plays, man.
19 plays.
I didn't know he did.
I saw online the piece that Lynn did that we opened the play with, the one that you shot, and I saw Lynn in 1990 doing that piece.
Electric Midnight?
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm gonna send it to you, because I pulled it up and I stuck it on my face. He had hair and had a little beard, but you should contrast to, because he's reading at an open mic, and he read that piece. And then the way he did it, that you shot,
yeah,
amazing. But let me ask you something now. But Dr. Mongo, how you meet Dr. Mongo?
It's the same way. His
heard about him first.
You heard about him first. All these crazy poets who I was reading with up in the Echo Park area, they were all talking about, because there weren't that many people of color who were reading. And I heard them all talking about this brother from Skid Row named Dr. Mongo. And at first I was thinking, that name, man, I got to meet this cat. And then another friend of mine had some of Mongo's books. Mongo had chapbooks out in the early 90s. And I started reading some of his chapbooks, and I didn't know he was actually from Cleveland. That was pretty close to Pittsburgh.
Yeah, from Cleveland. So let's talk about, 2 more things before you tell me the projects that you're working on. Why did you shoot, and this might interest Bobby too, why are you shooting in black and white?
I don't know. I guess,
do you ever think about reshooting a lot of those in color or anything?
I don't want them in color.
Yeah.
I don't want them in color. And I know it's kind of, a lot of people like stuff in black and white. How do you think it looks in black and white?
It's okay in black and white, but I always, as an artist, a visual artist too, I always thought that color adds so many of the missing elements that you can't pick up in black and white. Black and white, you can pick up some shadows, dark, light, gray, and all that kind of stuff, but you could, a person can do so much now. And then, what I was thinking about this young generation. See, the generation that we got now is the generation that is used to these.
Yeah.
And see, I'm not. I'm still trying to catch up on this little thing. I'm used to bigger things in my hands to move around and look at the TV, my computer screen. But they used to this, and they also used to. I think they would see things. If you do a couple of them and concentrate on this younger generation, the amazing things that they would see in the pieces like that, old guys like us, we'll miss them, because we used to black and white. We right at the trend when black and white move into color. But that's just something to think about. Tell me about.
Can I say just one more thing?
Yeah,
Melvin, when you look at what we're doing, when you look at what we're doing with LA Subway Shakespeare Project, because I notice I tend to forget quick now, but I'm channeling three people. I'm channeling there's a director named John Cassavetes. He's one person who, when you look at LA Subway Shakespeare, what we're doing, you're looking at a mixture of three people. You're looking at John Cassavetes, you're looking at August Wilson, and you're looking at Shakespeare. John Cassavetes, even though he's known for his acting, and he was
Filmmaker too.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, he was an amazing actor, an amazing filmmaker.
He come out of the world of Peter Falk and all of them.
Yeah.
They came out of the same.
And when you look at and the thing is, now listen, I am not comparing myself to Cassavetes. I'm not. But I think I watched so much of his work, it kind of seeped into me. I mean, you know how Cassavetes would take the camera. If you notice that's how Shakespeare, how we shoot our Shakespeare. And you see August Wilson, he had a street, and then when the way August Wilson comes in, he had a street theater company in Pittsburgh. And in the summer, certain streets that didn't get a lot of traffic, they would do street theater. So that's one of the reasons why I'm doing it out in the street. So you got Cassavetes with the camera angles moving. You got August Wilson on the street, and then you got Shakespeare. So when you look at what I'm doing, you're looking at three artists.
Now, and just a couple more things before we wind up, so I can get Michelle over here.
Great interview.
Lynn, that was one of the aspects of last time I was talking to Lynn, we used to talk about that a lot, is that he used to do a lot of that street theater.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, in the community of Watts. Most of those pieces that he did, it was a lot of them with not only, he's one of the first persons to start doing what they call immersion theater, which they would have moved from one community or one section of the community to the next.
That's where that term came from.
Yeah, so he was doing that way back, and he did it with, he talked about that piece, the Central Avenue Chalk Circle or something, I think what he called it. And that's one thing, and the other thing is one of the things that caused a rip in the Watts Village Theater Company is the artistic director had also developed a project around the Metro, and Lynn and a lot of the board directors thought that they were off point, and that's caused them to split, and they lost the artistic director left. This was like 2013 when that happened. But the whole conflict was about the whole Metro subway. They were doing a lot of stuff, moving from subway to subway, and some of the board members thought that they had got off point, especially when they moved too close towards Hollywood, and it caused a conflict. Artistic director left, and that's when Lynn came back, took over the company again in 2013.
Who was the artistic director?
Rodriguez. I can't.
Well, the thing is, you don't know how stoked I was when I heard Lynn Manning wanted to do a couple scenes with us. One of our main actors, Tommy Franklin, we were just having a coffee, I think at my house or at some cafe, and Tommy said to me, because Tommy's in a lot of the Shakespeare Tommy's an amazing actor
Yeah,
who I met at LA Theater Center. I met Tommy studying with Ed Cambridge, and Tommy said, Hassan, listen, why don't we see if Lynn Manning will do Othello and I'll play Iago? And I said, Tommy, man, Lynn Manning ain't gonna do, And I didn't know he had been following us. I didn't know he had been watching it,
Yeah.
And so Tommy said, I said, well, Tommy, you can go ahead and ask him, but Lynn is like working down at the Mark Taper. He ain't gonna do no.
Now, let me say this. Let me get you in before. I want you to tell us about the projects that you're working on, that you're getting ready to work on. And then I would like to have an opportunity to bring you on the radio show, the Qumran Report.
I would love that.
We can do it live. So tell us about the projects that you're working on.
Right now?
Well, what you're getting ready to work on.
Well, Mel, actually, I'm hoping me and you we're talking about doing something.
Yeah.
We don't want to tell the world too much about that right now because it's not in a finalized stage. But I mean, to be brutally frank, right now, we only have one more Shakespeare episode that we're going to post, and then we're going to stop for a while and go into a heavy crowdfund. We're going to go because we need more equipment. We have 19 scenes in the can right now, and we just rebuilt our YouTube page. We're a theater company without walls, and not because of finances or anything, but we're on YouTube. It's the only place you can see us. We're on YouTube.
For people that want to get involved with you, how do they get in touch with you?
Oh, we have a Facebook page, LA Subway Shakespeare Project, LA Subway Shakespeare Project on the Facebook, and you can go to our YouTube page. We just rebuilt our YouTube page, LA Subway Shakespeare Project. I'm on Facebook, Hassan Jamal. So that's how people can reach us.
So I want to thank you very much. I'm going to invite you to come on the Qumran Report so we can talk about it in depth, So thank you very much.
Okay, Mel.